Welcome to episode 46,
Hello,
Comics That
everybody.
Influence.
Here we are. This is Kurt and Jake once again. We are comic makers, we're comic creators, but we're also comic fans and we're comic collectors. And we're going to be sharing with you some highlights from our collections that influence us or not. In some cases, we're just flipping through these for the first time. And what are you going to be flipping through today, Kurt?
The number one issue of Michael Moorcock's Elric of Meliboné by Roy Thomas, P. Craig Russell, and Michael T. Gilbert. This
Pacific Comics.
is, I say this all the time with pride. I did not grow up with superhero Marvel DC comics, either side of the fence. None of them. I was an indie boy from the beginning. And more importantly, I was a savage sort of Conan. I was all consumed. That and ninjas, martial arts, and all that kind of stuff. This comic, still today, baffles me. Did you read this? Did you ever get a copy and read the series?
I think I have that. I might have a thicker volume of it though.
Yeah, yeah, because they did. They came back and did. Oh gosh, what was it? Stormbringer? Stormbringer was just it's
Yeah, and
absolutely.
that cover you have, it's like it's weird. It's like black and white, right?
It's pencil. It's pencil.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
pencil.
it's now the thing about it is it baffled me because I was a young guy. This is 1983, so I'm 13 years old. I do purchase this off the stand. This is not my copy. I got another copy. Um, and it, it baffled me because I was so involved with the black and white magazine and the Marvel comic version of Conan the Barbarian that I was like, what the hell is this? Like, it was drawn weird. It was colored weird. There was everything weird about it, which also ticked all the boxes for me, unbeknownst to me, because I was struggling as a teenager and everybody was calling me weird. So the thing about this is I can't stress enough about getting involved in something that you don't quite understand in order to grow. And for me, not only was P. Craig Russell, I knew who Roy Thomas was, but not only did P. Craig Russell become a very integral part of me growing as a comic book artist, because I always got everything and anything he did, but Michael Moorcock as a, I guess you would call him a contemporary sci-fi fantasy writer, is still to the day something I constantly am unpacking. One of the beauties of YouTube is people posting old interviews of our favorites and our creators, and there just seems to be every month somebody putting something up there. Now he splits his time between England and Paris, and he has a home in Paris, and so he's often interviewed by people, in Paris, and so there's French subtitles or all that kind of stuff. But still, when you hear him talk, it's just amazing. And you and I share also one of the most intrinsic, true values in his contribution to prog rock, which was Hawkwind and how
Space
he became Space
space
Ritual.
rock.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
Space Ritual. But he also did, they had the Black Sword album where it was him, Michael Moorcock, doing spoken word as it was integrated in the Hawk Wind music. Also, too, like talking about French greats, Mobius. Airtight Garage is based on Jerry Cornelius, who is a pre free character. Like the story goes that Michael Moorcock put together stories about Jerry Cornelius in New World, the magazine he was editing, to get other people to write from that point of view. And that was how Airtight Garage had come about with, it's the Airtight Garage of Jerry Cornelius. And of course, you have the Major Grouper and so on and so forth. So when looking at something, I think which is absolutely gorgeous in flow, line sequencing, and then the writing, in as sword and sorcery comic books go, if you're just getting into it or you've been into it because you had an entry point for maybe something more contemporary, like I don't know, Crom the Barbarian, that you you have to get a hold of the Roy Thomas, P. Craig Russell. Now, the other thing too, I'm going to ask you this question. I think we've had this discussion before, but I think it's worth having again. Michael T. Gilbert. What do you know about Michael T. Gilbert, Jake?
Not a lot. I know that I know that the Pete Craig Russell art really draws you in because it's such a beautiful blend of kind of like classic like Gil Kane inspired Marvel style with the the Art Nouveau art, of reminiscent of like Muka, and the Deco period. But I don't know about Gilbert.
So
Wanted to
he
make us smart.
here's the credits though. Listen to this. Script and adaptation by Roy Thomas. Pencils, colors by Michael T. Gilbert. Layouts, inks, colors by P. Craig Russell. Title and lettering by Tom Orachowski. Come
Yeah,
on. We talk like how could this comic book fail? So
it's a
you
super
have
group.
this, it is, but they're bouncing. I mean, other than the writing, which I know enough about Gilbert and Russell to know that they most definitely had read Moorcock going into this and were dying to be a part of this project. But their input would have been just really a really amazing thing to see how Roy Thomas wanted to keep certain things motivated through telling, you're taking a novel and you're condensing it into a comic book. So
Real quick.
there's a lot of editing, but the richness of Moorcock's world for Meliboné, and Elric and his cousin, his cousins, and there's a lot of beats you got to keep in there, or you're gonna lose the
Yeah, real
the
quick.
flow.
Gilbert, Michael T. Gilbert is most well known for Mr. Monster,
Yeah.
by published by Eclipse, but his other credits include Star Reach. He This is cool. He made a self-published underground comic in 1973 called New Paltz Comics. I gotta get a hold of that because
Yep.
I used to live in New Paltz when I was a little kid. He worked for Kitchen Sink, which is like totally underground. Star Reach, American Splendor #4. He took over from Crumb, uh, drawing some Harvey Pekar stories. He worked on Quack, which I remember the Wraith. It was a parody of the Spirit from Will Eisner, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
this Elric series comes up as one of his better credits. But I think Mr. Monster is probably his most visible. He also did, oh yeah, and Mr. Monster was later picked up by Dark Horse. So yeah, he was born in 1951, so he's age 73 now, and he's also been in heavy metal, Harlan Ellison's Dream Corridor. He did work on Doctor Strange a little bit for Marvel. I think he just kind of dabbled. And yeah, Superman, Batman, Donald Duck, Bart Simpson. Wow. So he's gone out and done some commercial jobs and everything, but it seems like his origins are in the indies, and by the time he gets to Pacific Comics and is working on this, it's quite a collaboration with some names here.
Yeah, they were not fooling around. I think that's the real blessing that was brought to this. And of course, you establish this level of craftsmanship, and then you're holding anybody else that's going to come along to it. And I've seen many other Elric adaptions. Um, not ever bought one. There was one with the Ruby Throne. I can't remember, but and it was a European, and it just kind of hit the marker for me in being in this feeling, that this team had put together. But you can tell that everybody's trying to reach the same altitude that's in this work and everything. I remember stopping on this page, and still today, I don't know what my attraction is to it, but I can tell you right now, weird was definitely a part of it, and the fact that this very effeminate man was wielding all this power and swords, and he had a demon sword called Stormbringer, and it's just, oh, where is this stuff? Where do you go to get more of this? And
Well,
I
he was
just think
femme. Yeah, he was femme a little bit. That was a big difference between Conan and
it's
Big
well, it's
Willie.
exactly the opposite, is what Moorcock said. He said he wanted to play with the same trope
Yeah.
of Conan, because everybody was, 60s and 70s, right? Everybody
Mhm.
was. And so there's a detective, I forget who it is. I will post who it is right now. Who is an albino detective,
Mhm.
much like a Sherlock Holmes type of thing. So that's actually and it was a pulp story series.
Yeah.
That's actually who he uses the template to leap off of. And then, of course, you get into this chaos. So you have Ariok, who's the god of chaos, and you also get into the champions. His world of everything has happened and is just the way it is, and you have Hawk Moon. That's another character who was preceding Elric, and there's just all this wonderful stuff he was already playing with in his fiction. Um, and then, of course, that becomes a real big attractor. But once again, oh yeah, and then he does get there's in the Conan the Barbarian comics, he's an injected character that fights alongside Conan, and he has this pointy green hat. It's a Barry Windsor Smith did it, and I still
Oh.
once again, very weird, very bizarre, not quite like I didn't quite grasp it, but I enjoyed it. It just it fed me. It constantly like made me hungry for more, but I didn't know what more was. You know, I
Yeah, it
just knew if
reminds
it
me
had
of the.
swords and magic, I was in monsters and beautiful women. I got that part at 13, but it still sticks with me today. I think that's also something I'm kind of harping on and everything.
Yeah, so this is it's kind of conceptual. It's a little tough if you're going to sit down, even if you're reading all the words and the balloons. It's to grasp because it's very conceptual. Then that has a little bit to do with the fact that Moorcock was, kind of out there. He was a writer of music and lyrics, and um, coming to comics, it wasn't really for your typical, like, 12-year-old. It was, a lot more ambitious, and tied into a lot of kind of like sorcery and spirituality, and the aesthetic was very unique. These are all the original colors because Kurt is holding the first Pacific Comics release in his hand, as
Yep,
opposed to
yep,
some of the reissues that you might see.
yep.
And that was also a bright palette that seemed like it was watercolored on top of Xeroxes, maybe. And they were kind of defining a real offshoot, to the sword and sorcery. It was kind of like this poetic, almost like an illustrated story, but without the prose. And
Exactly, and that's why I came to this page. You hit it right on the nail. You really did hit it on the nail, because you can kind of see how we're not getting a lot of blocking. You know what I mean? Like right after, where is it? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
those.
we get through this, and then it starts opening up, right? And you're getting all of this, but you're not getting hammered over the head. You know what I mean? Like even in my own dyslexic way, at 13, I could deal with this text. You know,
I mean,
am
it's
I
just
integrating?
it's something to look at, and you know that you're in a world, and you know that you're looking at these landscapes, and you know that you're, but but it isn't like, okay, a guy walks into a store, he puts something on the counter, and then he pulls out a gun. It's not like that kind of sequential thing.
Right,
It's
right,
like,
right,
you know,
right.
it's like this story's moving along, but then ironically there's so little text to it, so
Yep.
there's like a lot that your own imagination, is supposed to be filling in, and because it does not read like a typical comic, and this is why it reminded me so much of Drew, because
Oh yeah.
it was these landscapes, and these scenes, and you're in the world, and that they got these characters, that there's an aesthetic, that there's a color palette, there's a vocabulary, but if somebody asks you, well, what happens in the comic, you wouldn't be able to explain in a linear way, well, the
You
guy
gotta
walked
get
in.
it.
Right, right. So that's why it's high concept. It's high concept, and I remember always seeing these Elrics and flipping through them, and and I remember the crossovers and stuff. But it definitely has its own place in the pantheon.
Yeah, so
So
I'm most definitely going to be sharing more and more issues of it. But also, this is from excuse me. This is from my reconnecting with, like, this is a Gilbert Russell, um, reconnecting with the classic indies from the '80s, which Pacific Comics was one of the ones that was really leaning into
yeah,
non
that spread
superhero.
right there. That spread right there. All right, so here's some ads for Pacific Comics, and you can see that
Yeah,
they were launching some real heavy duty stuff with Neil
yeah.
Adams, and who's that artist on the left? I forget who that
That's
was.
Gray Marrow.
Right, right, right. With full color, but that spread. Turn the page for a second. The spread that you were just on, right? It's almost like a tableau, right? It's almost like a scene on a Grecian urn or something, right? It's
Oh
kind
wow, that's pretty
there isn't like any dialogue, and there isn't like a before and an after. It's
right.
really kind of like a scene, but but here you got this like crazy electric sword, and you got the figure to the left, and it does look like half light, half shadow. It reminds you
Mm-hmm.
of some of this ancient art. At the same time, it's like futuristic, and at the same time it's backwards, so it's like you got the architecture there, the layering, really interesting. i
Great
i always get to
times.
I always get distracted by the ads.
Yeah, I know you do.
Right.
And then I just wanted to finish off that you made the comment. This is a pencil sketch, so I think it was really cool that the fact was they were using something that wasn't completed yet. And then once again, I say this all the time. I was also buying comics on a place where I possibly could copy them. I
Yeah.
would feel a sense of success. But if you actually gave me your drawings in the back of the comic book, why wouldn't I have bought your comic?
Yeah.
So once again, I'm just playing off of my 13-year-oldness, back then, where, here's this drawing, if you will, where I'm now starting to see things in process, and then I get this, and Conan the Barbarian did that. Excuse me, Savage Sword of Conan did the same thing. There was a lot of like articles and extras, if you will, which helped bring things closer to me. So, but just absolutely a great book, great series, great writers, great artists, like everybody involved in this, from Michael Moorcock down to Michael T. Gilbert. You're not going to lose on it. So whether you
And
can get the piece,
we should say also that Elric did not start in the comics. Elric
no, no,
starts
no, no,
out
no,
it
no,
starts out in the paperbacks, right?
no. He
And
actually starts. He starts out in pulps.
right, well,
Pulps.
the oh
62 or something.
61, yeah.
61.
Science
Yeah.
science fantasy novel. Yeah, for
Yeah.
Elric first
Yep.
appeared in print in the novella The Dreaming City in
Yep.
issue number 47 of Science Fantasy, June
Yep.
1961, the doomed albino antihero, one of the better known. So by the time you get to comics, that was what year? I mean, you're in the 80s.
83.
You're in
83.
83. Right, but when you get out of the pulps and you get into the paperbacks, Michael Moorcock, the Dreaming City, the Weird of the White Wolf, there was a Daw Books, if anybody remembers those paperbacks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great covers, painted covers. Um, so it says Elric was depicted on the 1977 cover. So you go from the 60s to the 70s to the 80s. It's pulps into paperbacks into comics, and so that's why they can rely so much on the character and the story, already having existed. By the time they get to these kind of conceptual comics, you have to lay in so much because it's all been laid out in the paperbacks, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So that's what I have to share. I
Good
am
stuff.
dying for you to get into that cover right there. Which,
Oh
by the way, it reminds me of the movie Conquest by Fulci. You ever seen that movie?
no, I didn't. No.
Oh God! So you know the Fulci that did Zombie, the movie, the Italian director. He did a sword and sorcery movie called Conquest, and it had this naked woman with an iron mask on as the protagonist, and then these two male characters that are, you know, on a quest. You know, so it's. But I totally would buy it. When was that comic book made, Jake?
Right. So this was the 80s, and
Oh my
we do need to talk. This is 87. We do need to talk about Harrier Comics briefly.
yes,
Harrier Comics was founded in 1984 by Martin Locke over in the UK, and they published more than 120 issues of over 30 titles
wow,
from the mid to late 80s. The Harrier line, and it's really interesting stuff. It's very, very indie, black and white stuff, science fiction, adventure, fantasy genres, kind of like alternative, also a little bit on the mature side. Um,
mm-hmm.
during the explosion of black and white indies, Harrier Comics first started with a space fantasy series called Conqueror in 1984, which was written by Locke and artist David Harwood. But yeah, so I always look out for Harrier Comics. This I picked up, obviously Barbarian. How could you not? This is number one. It's in good shape, so I don't know what it's worth or anything, but you open it up and you get into some really nice black and white interplay.
Yeah,
You have
wow,
a setup here of a story. They're also giving you a little bit of background here. Carol is impulsive and reckless. Memory was a kitchen drudge in the city's castle. On a whim, she was chosen to be the subject of a magical experiment. So I could just get into all this and just read it, right? There's a ton in here, right? This could really be like 5 pages of text, but they just like condensed it all in this little font. Your story's up and running. There's some light nudity here. This looks like it was all done with a brush, and in a pretty interesting
jeez,
style. The script was by Martin Locke, so he was the publisher, and he was still scripting here at this point. The art is by Nick Neocleus. Neocleus. I don't know if that's Greek or if it's a made up name. Nick Neocleus. The girl in the iron gag. So you got me right there. A little bit of light bondage here. A little of some standing around here. A little bit of standing around here, but it gets better towards the back. There is some like some bondage and torture kind of stuff here. This she's whipped, she's chain. There's some chain stuff going on. Um, and not too good on the action, but the art is a pretty interesting indie style, and here you can see some
Wow.
scenes. So yeah, there's some
It's
real
like
like imagery here,
it's like Eric
and
Stanton.
right, well, yeah, except not as heavy. And then here you get into this character that you see like this kind of like effigy character, and I love the way that they're dark, and they have these like
So well
shiny
done.
effects.
So
Yeah,
well
really
done.
cool. You got the Jack Kirby hands here.
Mm.
Um and then she says, but now let's you and me wrestle. So they're wrestling. There's a 2-on-1 going on here. And then all of a sudden she takes a sword, chops off the freaking head and the hands and everything.
And
Well,
it's
so
empty.
yeah, this crazy stuff. This is a self back cover, right? And
Yeah.
no ads anywhere throughout, right?
Wow.
So this
Getting
is
a copy
really
of that. Oh,
this
I'm
is
getting
really
a copy
packed
of
in,
that.
really packed in stuff. And then on the back, you're plugging Dead Face by Harrier, which is this famous guy Eddie Campbell that did Bacchus later. And I don't know if this is the same exact guy, but I think this was inspired by Sin City, or maybe inspired Sin City, one way or the other. But this Eddie Campbell character. But let me not get distracted. We're going through this great stack I got here.
Oh my God, Jake.
A
Oh
short
my
stack, short stack.
God.
So here's
Ooh.
Star Masters #1, AC Comics,
Mm.
Paul Galassi cover.
Oh.
Here's back to back Breed and Wasp, Women's Outer Space Patrol. You
Love
get
it.
in, you get inside, and it's characters written and created in 1985 by Tom Lyle. The colors are done by R. Black, and I think that's Bill Black's relative. I don't know, wife. I'm not sure who R.
Mm.
Black is, but it
Mm.
sounds like in the family. Look at this full color female, action packed space stuff going on. They're beaming down. A lot going
I
on the
love it.
page here.
Oh, I
This
love it.
face looks like it could have been drawn by Jim Starlin. You have all of these effects here. You got the zaps. All this stuff going on. Look at this. This is Women's Outer Space Patrol.
I love it.
And yeah, so this is the first feature in here. It goes on and on. Nice stuff. Let me see. There's a backup here, and you're into Breed, also by Paul Ryan. But this is space trilogies and space stuff. You got
Space
these
opera.
space odysseys. Yeah, you got these robots and ghosts. So this guy was a real fan of Jim Starlin, and just taking off in the genre. It doesn't say who does the colors, so I assume that that's Tom Lyle. And it's interesting the way the colors done because it looks like they were cut in film, you know, but I'm not sure. It. Yeah, I mean, the colors are a little bit all over the place for me. Um, but yeah, this is great stuff. Tom Lyle after Jim Starlin, and then wraps this up.
Amazing.
So this two
Amazing.
two action packed
How many
comics.
pages is that?
Yeah, it's pretty substantial.
It's more.
This.
It's like. Is it a 64?
Well, there's 15 story pages for the second feature, 15
Yeah.
number pages, and the first feature is 16. Yeah, 16 plus times 2 plus ads. So this is
Wow.
AC Star Masters 1, Future Fighters on
Beautiful.
the Far Frontier. It's a split right down the middle. Paul Galassi, would you do the cover for us? And then plugging next in Star Masters, it's going to be Initiation and A Descent into a Heavenly Hell, with art by Paul Ryan and Bill Black as editor. So this was like the real heyday of AC Comics. It wasn't just all female stuff, but you definitely had some here up in the front. Nice stuff. This, I'm shaking my head on this one.
Hmm.
The many
Wow.
the many reincarnations of Lazarus. Number one, a
Wow.
very complicated, hand colored. It looks like colored pencil, maybe some marker, right? Come in, brought it in onto computer. Then you're adding some Photoshop filters. Fisher Comics, Fisher Media Publications, I should say, and this is coming to us in 1998. The many reincarnations of Lazarus, Fisher Media. Some cool pinup right here, all black and white, and this is all done by Zach Hennessy.
Hmm.
Lettering, art, story, and then a little bit of help on the lettering by Kelly Crystal and Sandra Cassidy. Everything else is this guy Zach Hennessy. Look at this. So
Wow.
pretty rich blacks.
Yeah.
Very dark. I'm seeing a Tim Vigil influence here in
Yeah.
1989. And very indie, double page spread. These mountainscapes and these landscapes. So this is like really, really doing your homework as an artist, doing your nature
Yep.
stuff, working it in. There's quite a bit of text and dialogue here, and you're getting into some interesting art styles. So the many reincarnations of Lazarus. How about this? Just a quick flip
Fantastic.
through. Very, very
Man.
detailed. The drapery and the kind of like texture. Like these kind of like leather textures. The shading on the muscles. The balance of light, dark, and mediums. The hatching, the directional hatching. Then you get to a spread like this, and it's opened up like you're
Whoa.
on these snowy mountains with all these
Whoa.
characters, zombie guys with half muscle left over. Everything is eaten away. This chick with the eye, she's whipping her sword around. They're having these epic battles. This one, the page got a little washed out in the printing. It looks like, so I don't know. There's a little inconsistency. Some pages are heavy, some pages are dark, but really imaginative stuff. Never heard of Zach Hennessy before. So this is another, entry on the lost highway of indie comics.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
I don't think he did himself any favors with this cover. He should have went a lot heavier and darker, high contrast, because you want to convey to the people this is a black and white comic inside, and maybe you just go with a black and white cover. I'm thinking interesting stuff. So he says, "See you in 2 months." Right, from your mouth to God's ears. We don't know if there was another one. I might look that up before the episode ends, but that is an interesting pickup. Um, do you know about this one, Jinru?
Mm. No.
Be-
Oh,
Believe
that's
Comics. So
beautiful.
looks like a ninja guy with black and blue and red. But then you get inside, and wow, quite disappointing. So this is issue number 2. Stephen J. Egged, Egged, Jinru. I think I might have had the other one of this, but when you open up the page here, instantly disappointed, and I'm
What
sorry
year?
to. It is 1995,
Hmm.
so that's right when we were doing our thing. But instantly disappointed, folks. You can see right away this is very fuzzy. So he brought this into a computer, and then he printed it out at low res, or maybe it was blown up or something. It looks like it might have been a 200 DPI. So then it's really fuzzy. He brought this in to color it, and you know it's got this real image style. So I'm
Yeah.
not gonna go. I'm not gonna go too deep into this, but you
Get to
know,
the
uh,
ninjas.
yeah. Well,
Flip it.
here's
See,
some
how long does it
action.
take to get to the ninjas?
Here we go. We got some. This lettering was done on Corel Draw. I can tell you right now. Um, Remember that, and the lettering is laid out on the text is laid out on Whizbang, which was the famous font we all used back in those days. But yeah, some really like weird kind of like image inspired, standing around. Here's a female character. and some actions. Looks like some abductions, and here comes the ninja now. Finally,
Yeah.
and before anything happens, this
He gets
guy
shot.
he gets shot in the side,
Oh
and
god.
here's a little bit of action, but yeah, you folks, this was the exact thing not to do, is scan in your artwork at the 300 or less, and then print it out where your colors are all mixing with your blacks. You got this Photoshop. I mean, he was trying to do image, but there's a little less production polish here, and he's kind of throwing a lot of things together. Some textures and lettering.
David Mack.
Uh, yeah, here's a
David
nice
Mack pinup. Wow.
yeah, kabuki,
Wow. That should have been
and
the
here's a
cover.
right. Why wasn't that the cover?
Doesn't.
And then here,
Yeah.
Tion Walker pinup.
Ah.
Red Door Comics presents the Jinru Back Order catalog. They have an
Woo.
ash can, another ash can. They have issue one, and then they have another ash can. So they have a couple of ash cans and an issue one. And you could order all that stuff right here. And the back cover is a wrapper. So that was an interesting one. Um,
Woo.
Here's DNA agents. DNA agents. Here's some big names. Mark Evanier, Eric Larson, a very young Eric Larson, and Sam De La Rosa. You got Insides by Eric Larson. This is by Eclipse Comics, edited by Kat Ironwood. This is 1986, and this is a pretty professional production here. The DNA agents, as the name implies, are messing around with genetics, and they have all these creatures here. You got this alluring female with the rainbow hair. This is really professionally done, comics, a little bit cartoony, but, that's the style here. And Eric Larson, his humble beginnings before he becomes one
He
of
did
the,
pencils and inks.
it says illustrated by Eric Larson and Sam De La Rosa. So it doesn't say who did what. But, if Eric Larson's first, you imagine that that's the pencils. Maybe they combined on the inks. Um, and it didn't look like the Eric Larson we know. Here it looks a little bit like Don Simpson, Here it looks a little bit like your typical like Rich Buckler, Marvel guys. You could throw a lot of names in there. But here we're getting some interesting poses, right? This big Luke Cage looking guy here with the afro, and so that's DNA agents for you. A little taste. It's basically superhero comics, but it's a little more conceptual with the DNA angle. And yeah, I don't know. There's nothing too special grabbing me here, and some features in the back. So this was DNA agents number 15. They were well along. Here's a nice Dave Stevens pinup of the DNA agents character, and he's just amazing. I think this is airbrushed. I think this is real airbrush. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but just amazing. Like touch. Dave Stevens was one for the ages. And it says Eclipse presents Dave Stevens posters monthly, beginning with Seduction of the Innocent, Rainbow, Mr. Monster. $5.95 postpaid, $15 for all three. How about that? I would like that poster right there. And then here's all your back issues. So one last one, and this is plugging ESPers, which looks pretty good. Um, James D. Hundell and David Lloyd. So that's DNA Agents versus Gemstone, Eric Larson, and then finally, uh,
Wow.
this is a John Byrne classic. So we're going back to Canada here, and this cover, of course, is Gil Kane, but yeah, there's a GK right there. But in done in his distinctive pilot marker that he used to use.
Yeah.
This is when Gil Kane
Right.
said, "Screw it, I'm not doing pen and ink anymore. I'm just going to use some markers."
Brush. Yeah.
Yeah,
Took too much time.
Well, maybe he was doing this maybe he was doing this in luncheonettes and airports, so it's a lot more convenient.
Oh, good
You
point.
know,
Good point.
so get into this, and so this is a reprint of the Doomsday Squad. I remember this from back in the day. Fantagraphics is reissuing it, and these are what the original covers look like.
Was it
Uh,
Charlton?
yes, it I remember it being Charlton,
Yeah.
but there's no mention here. It says written by Joe Gill, drawn by John Byrne, and colors by these three people here: Matt Howarth, negative restoration, Mark Hempel.
What year is
So Fantagraphics is putting this out in '87, but the Doomsday Squad came
wow.
out in the '70s.
Right.
It says all characters and stories from the Doomsday Squad, copyright 1974, Charlton Comics.
There you go. There you
And
go.
there's a brand new Gil Kane cover. Um, and I'm wondering if they were taking some anthologies and compiling them here. Let's see. It says, yeah, no, this is Doomsday Squad number 7. Oh, yeah, it says right here. I missed that. So there was a run of Doomsday Squad. And here's back issues of number 1, 2, 3, 4. And it says also available number 5, Gil Kane cover, and number 6, Gil Kane cover. And so here comes out number 7, and then it says also watch out for our 2-issue ROG 2000 series.
Hmm.
So yeah, so their Fantagraphics was mining the realm of the John Byrne Charlton work. They got the rights from whoever owned it at that time. They went back to the negatives. It says laser separations done by SM Graphics. So this was all
Wow.
recolored from the negatives. That
Ooh.
means that Charlton Comics printed color versions of this stuff, but they went and they got the negatives, meaning that you take the black and white plate, or maybe this could be all the original. No, it looks like it was recolored. I'm gonna guess, and I'm gonna say it was recolored. But folks, this is early John Byrne doing this character, this Grizzly Adams looking guy, and you could see John Byrne was John Byrne, but it was a little early on. This is a little weird here with this like half-tone dinosaur getting zapped. Um, you know, he was a little bit, I guess amateurish the way some of these,
Wait, it's just
balloon,
starting out.
yeah, some of these balloons were laid out, but he had a great style right from the beginning. And here's a little bit of sitting around talking, some dinosaurs. Not a lot on each page in terms of like panel breakdowns. You know, um, the most you see is like four panels to a page, and then you have just like splash after splash after splash. Um, he is breaking things up into chapters, which makes me think maybe these were, compiled. Um, and a lot of word balloons here, but but
Jeez.
to me it's a
Wow.
yeah, to me
Oof.
it's a treat to see early John Byrne,
Oh, heck
1974.
yeah.
John Byrne, he had the longest career in comics. I was just a kid. I was one of his biggest fans. When he got onto X-Men, when he got onto Marvel Team Up, he got onto Power
Alpha
Man,
Flight.
Alpha Flight. Well, Alpha Flight was his baby, creator owned, but I really loved him the most. And when he took over Iron Fist, you know, and this is a backup story. Looks like some kind of like real colorful watercolor thing. We're underwater
Hmm.
talking around, so that's some Fantagraphics. And then here, there's like a little index. Your collection is not complete unless you have ROG 2000 by John Byrne, Doomsday Squad by John Byrne. They did Gil Kane stuff. Back around the time Frank Miller was getting ready for the third grade, Gil Kane created the first story of a renegade assassin tracking down a presidential imposter and a plot for world destruction. Scripted by Archie Goodwin, Savage is a breathtaking action thriller and a landmark in adult comics. In comics for adults. They also put out some '66 Steve Ditko stuff when he walked away from Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. So Fantagraphics is a great company. And here's Anything Goes. I have some copies of Anything Goes. But how about that? Yeah. So there's some hits and misses here, but this right here is great. It's good to see John Byrne, and they were in the Jurassic realm, I guess. So that was the
I think
Doomsday Squad.
it's always so important to see your heroes developing. I think that's always such a
Yeah, you wonder.
it's yeah, it's just
You
I think
wonder if he was
it's
getting
great.
paid. Did he do Doomsday Squad for free? Was he getting a couple of bucks a page?
Did he
You know,
do Doom Squad on his own and sold it? You know what I mean? Like, was he?
right?
I think we think of things so packaged oriented that we kind of miss the idea that young people, back in the day, were putting samples together in order to get work. The
Yeah,
samples could have came across to Charlton, and Charlton was like, "Yeah, we'll hire you, but finish this damn thing, and we'll print it." And
right.
then it goes out, and it's the magazine sells really well. The comic sells really well, and then they come back and they say, "Okay, well, when you finish that other little freelance job we gave you, do us another Doomsday Squad." I think
Yeah.
that's a more reality looking instead of what we have now, which is people become completely formed as a creative by making their own comic and publishing it on their own.
Well, that was the great
It's
thing
a
about Charlton, and that was the great thing about
yes,
indie
yes,
publishers is that
yeah,
they if somebody did something on spec, has it sitting there, and you like it, you can publish it, and it turns
yeah.
out to be the earliest work of John Byrne, who would become the top artist at Marvel for decades.
Right.
So
All right. Well, we just did another great indies comics.
another short
I have
side. I gotta get
you.
a bag for this one.
You always surprise me. This is once again. This is what Jake has been doing to me since what 1994. Since we've
These two,
you'll
these
pull
two, I
stuff
gotta
out.
get.
I was like, where the hell you find that?
Yeah, these two I got a bag and board.
Yeah.
This one was really interesting. I would maybe come back and try to find out anything else by Zach Hennessy.
Yeah,
And
myself
then this
included.
this was a nice little walk down the retro lane and everything.
Yeah, it's
But
great.
some of these are just like looking at people develop and Eric Larson and stuff. So that is my report. And
Cool.
folks, check us out next time. Who knows what we're gonna pull out of the old comic box? But comics that influence is talking about stuff that we like and hits and misses and going over it and gushing over cool things. Also check out our creator exchange, indie creator exchange, where we do interviews, and of course our flagship Making Turbo Pit Fighter, which is right here, where we're making comics of our own, and we do that every Sunday, rain or shine. So that is our channel, Kurt. And
All right, Jake.
check out our other stuff. You can go to cromthebarbarian.com if you want to see Kurt's side hustle. There it is right there. And we just finished a taping of an episode about that. So that's all we got, folks. Go on and make your own stuff, and and be in touch. Join our community tab on YouTube and join the convo.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Jake. I'll see you next Sunday.
All right, pal. Later on.